somebody did an economic statistical report on that. I'm gonna have to send you guys that.
I would love that.
Oh, it is awesome.
I would look it out. I'll take 10 acres.
No, you get you a couple $1 million. You got coming to you now, baby.
With the 40?
Current value.
News analysis, commentary, conversation. This is Table Talk with Paul Beaulieu, Tracie Washington, and Blayne Bondy.
Welcome to Table Talk. I'm Paul Beaulieu, and with me are Tracie Washington and Blayne Bondy again. Guys, welcome. Good to have you again. And the hot topic of the week continues to be health care reform.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me that the Republicans, even our Congressman Giles, said this is not a partisan fight. Well, it has all of the earmarks of a partisan fight to me, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Some of the Republicans, like Congressman Giles, throwing up some, red flags like abortion. They cannot support anything that would fund abortion. Yet the Hyde Amendment states clearly that this is a moot point.
Yes.
The federal government cannot fund abortion. So it makes me suspect of all of the other antics that the Republicans are trying. One of the things that I think has received a lot of coverage has been the Renner riot, actually paying protesters to go to these town hall meetings and disrupt the Congress people and the senators who are making their pitch for health care reform. So my question to you, is health care reform in danger of failing because of vicious partisan politics?
I'll start by saying I don't think so. I think they, meaning the Republicans, have overplayed this hand. I learned today that, today meaning August 10th, Congressman Vitter today, and then on August 8th, held two town hall meetings, one in Pineville and one out in Kenner at the Yanni Center today. And there were crowds of people, especially today at the Yanni Center, and the lines were outside the building. I had photographs, but I knew that they wouldn't show well here. And that's good. That's really a good thing. That's exactly, in fact, what Obama wanted. He wanted people to attend these town hall meetings. My concern, Paul,
even town hall meetings called by David Vitter?
Town hall meetings for the simple fact that we wanted, as a nation, we wanted to have a conversation about health care reform. Now, what's disturbing is that we are, meaning the Republicans, I suppose it shouldn't be we, there are groups out here that are taking this to the extreme. They are sending out these emails, and I happen to get a copy of one of those emails. I don't know why Washington would be on the list of Republicans, but I got a copy of one of those emails saying you must get out to this town hall meeting and voice your discontent with health care reform. And it was, I should have brought it in and read it. And it was quite disturbing because I'm concerned that those individuals with valid questions, Paul and Blayne, about health care coverage, and we have tremendous issues that we'll talk about today about health care coverage, who's not covered, closing the gap, health care disparities. Those issues are not being discussed at these meetings because, number one, only those individuals who've gotten these mass emails are being amassed out to these town hall meetings, one. And number two, as we learned today in Pineville, the questions were pre-screened by Senator Vitter. So even if I make it, if you make it, Blayne, if you make it to these meetings, how is it that your questions or your concerns are going to be addressed, especially if you say, hey, I'm a small employer and I can't afford to cover my employees, but I understand that this Obama plan will assist. That question will never come to light. That won't be heard.
And that to me would serve a disservice to the people, to the voters, because the real questions are not being asked. It seems to me that these town hall meetings are being practically scripted, that they probably might not be that many people there who are, one, legitimately concerned, and one who serious questions answered about health care reform and who could possibly be for it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know Blayne and I talked about this before, but when I see a crowd at these town hall meetings, and when those individuals, like last week, I believe it was the congressman from Arkansas said, well, of the individuals in this crowd, who of you are over 65 and receiving Medicare? And the hands raised. And who of you are receiving veterans medical benefits? And the hands raised. Well, hello.
Sounds like government-run health care to me. Yeah. You know, I think the Republicans have been, you know, out ahead of this way before the Democrats. And you would think that the Democrats, because it's really their story to tell, will be the first ones out. But the Republicans have clearly beat the Democrats to the punch on this. For example, as Tracie just said, Senator Vitters held 2 meetings. Senator Mary Landrieu held none.
Yes.
Now, we're talking about a Republican congressman who's opposing health care reform, who's had 2 forums, and a Democrat who's for health care reform, although a more conservative approach to health care reform, who's held none. The Republicans have been key in getting out on the radio with their talking points. They are making the story theirs. They are playing on a lot of fears, as you mentioned earlier about Congressman Gow in the whole abortion question. Nowhere in this 1,100-page proposal is there any language that says government-sponsored abortions. There's already precedent on the book that goes against this, as well as Nancy Pelosi has already inserted language that said no abortions will be covered by federal funding. So the Republicans have done a great job of getting their story out, although it may not be the story of what's actually in the legislation. And I think the Democrats are in the corner, so to speak, and have to really get out and make this story theirs, as we've talked about previously. And some of the myths, I mean, there's these myths that are going out there that are just absurd. This week, Republican House Leader John Boehner out of Ohio put out a statement basically saying that senior citizens are going to be required every 5 years to go have a death consultation.
Right.
It is so far from the truth.
Right.
What it actually says is, for the first time, Medicare will pick up the cost of a living will, which you get to decide how your final days are spent, whether you want nutrition, whether you want to be kept alive on a ventilator, things that before were not covered. And a lot of people, whether you just fall under the guise of working poor or just on a fixed income, can't afford to go see a lawyer and determine how they want to end their final days. But nowhere is that forced upon you, and nowhere is that an option where you get to choose how you want to die. All it says is you get to go consult somebody on how you want your final days, but it's not government-sponsored euthanasia as they've sold it. So.
Well, and isn't that the most ridiculous point? I mean, it should be a boon for attorneys like myself who should be going rah, rah, rah. Finally, we get some stimulus for attorneys in one of these bills.
Exactly.
But you raised a couple of points about the myths, and we talked about the myths, and who's putting out, this information about the myths, Paul?
Well, I'm just wondering, when is the American public going to catch on? The Republicans are noted for playing dirty, but they play smart. And if you just sit back and allow them to run their game plan, as Blayne said, you can find yourself, if not totally confused, but leaning their way. There's a group called the Lewin Group that the Republicans quote daily. According to the Lewin Group, and they make their point. The Lewin Group came out with a study, and they make their point. I'm talking about Republican after Republican after Republican. So, you do a little research on the Lewin Group, and then you find out the Lewin Group is an Nginx company, all right, which owns the Lewin Group. But then the Nginx company is owned as the business of United Health Group, which is a large, it's insurance people, it's insurance companies. So, that's simple. You just follow the trail, and to me, it just invalidates the arguments of the Republicans. And, I just can't, as in a presidential election, and those two candidates and those two sides, I just can't see the American people going for it. They didn't go for it with McCain and Palin, and I don't think they'll go for it now. Now, the Republicans, there's an ad campaign.